So recently, Google announced Drone. Drone is an open sourced continuous integration server. I was super excited when I heard about this because it uses Docker containers. So if you've ever used any of the other ones like Jenkins, you kind of know it's open source and it works, but it's not great. So I jumped on Drone, amazing, but one kind of disappointment was, even though it uses Docker, it's pretty hard to make a container. So I did some research, went to the GitHub issues, did some digging, read through a bunch of the articles, and man, some really great discussion is going on around how to solve this issue. And I think it's kind of boiled down to two trains of thought. One is you can have Docker run or drone control Docker and kind of run a bunch of containers, or you can kind of go Docker and Docker. Since I've been using Docker for a long time, I thought, hey, I think there's actually a lot of Docker features that could be utilized to help speed up drone, to help get more companies using it, help more people adopt it. So I sat down, I thought through what's the best way I can illustrate it. And I came up with the standard use case. You have an application that has code, and you also compile that code for a distribution version. And so I thought, all right, let's do something really common. Let's pick an Angular app. So you have your typical Angular web app, and you've got your raw JavaScript code, but you don't want to give that out because you're writing some pretty cool stuff here. So you want to compile it down, and you want to create a container and put that out there. But you also think it'd be really great if I could create a container from that source code and use that as Vagrant or something else. And today, Drone, it's not exactly possible, but with only, I think, a handful of changes, I think it'd be added in, I think it'd be really powerful. So here's the diagram, and I'm also going to pull up a hypothetical YAML file that kind of goes through this flow. I wanted to kind of walk through it first, and then I want to show the process I use today to show you how this can pretty much already be achieved. So we'll start out. In our normal life, we're going to have a drone. He can be wherever, and then this is going to be Docker, so that could even be inside the drone, or it could be a host box. It doesn't matter. But what you're going to do is you're going to do some kind of git commit and trigger a hook, and you're going to pull your code into a folder, and then you're going to execute basically a container creation. And from here, you're going to start your pipeline. So create your image, you're going to make sure it starts up, then you're going to execute the tests on it, and you're going to go, all right, well, I need to create the distribution version, so let's pump that back up to the folder, and then from there, it's basically rinse and repeat. Now, let's kind of look at this more in detail from the YAML side of things. So how would a process like this work in Drone today? And I think the current YAML structure really provides a pretty straightforward way to do this. One second, I lost my, oh, there it is. So kind of over here on the left, I got the YAML file, and it starts out, and instead of starting from an image, the concept is you're going to create the image. And because we're going to create more than one image, we kind of have our first image up here. Hold on, let's shrink this window down. And then you're going to actually end up creating a second image. So if you see here, your second image is down here. So let's kind of look at that, what that looks like. So in your project that you cloned down, you got a Docker file. So its name is Dockerfile. So what you want to do is you want to build it, because with Docker, you want to build Docker files. So let's say you're going to build it, but you want to do some stuff like pass some environment variables, because when you build it, let's say you want to have the source maps in the Vagrant version, but you don't want that in production version. So let's just follow the same formula that's already being used today, where you have basically all the configuration that you want to pass to the container, but let's just make it nestable. So let's create a pipeline. So a pipeline is just a hypothetical thing of saying, what do I want to do down here? In what order do I want to execute this stuff? And in the pipeline, the idea is each time you do something in the pipeline, that's some kind of Docker run command. So it's actually, each one of these is an individual kind of instance of the container, which is the standard Docker process. So in our process, our pipeline, we do a startup. We don't pass any arguments to the Docker run command because basically we want to see, hey, we just ran the Dockerfile and did all the build steps, like copying our package JSON, doing an npm, a bower. We did that, and we gave our nifty container a run command. We want to see, did it start when somebody, when somebody just adds a container to it with the defaults, does it start? So yeah, it should start up. So that's a startup. And then test. All right. Well, we move through the pipeline like any of the other testing because we passed the previous test. So in our next one, we're saying, let's go ahead and run the actual test. So we're going to use that base image we created over here. We're going to attach a new container, but this time we're going to modify the entry point because we want to run commands on the box itself. So then we run npm test. Did it pass? Oh, it did. Great. So you can kind of see for the test, we're overriding the entry point on the docker run command. The services are, let's pretend you need MySQL and Mongo and you need some other custom guy linked. So I didn't put that in the diagram, but it's already supported today, services. The services are just nested, again, to follow that same kind of concept, which is in the pipeline, you can start a container for each one of the list items. So for each list item, you can attach the services. It doesn't really make sense when we're firing up our base image if it doesn't have need for services to add them there. But in our case, we were doing a test or whatever else, we might want to add those. All right, moving on to the next one. Base image. So what's special about this? What's special is up here in drone land, drone cloned your project into a folder. And because drone can talk to Docker, that means that drone can also mount a folder in Docker, which means that we can perform a build command inside of our container and get data to go from inside the distribution version back up to the folder. Well, why is that important? Well, for our next set, right, we want to build a second image, which is our distribution image. And for him, we need that first image we created to run the distribution because we want the distribution to come from the clean source. So he can do that there and push it up. And then since it's now in the folder, we can create a new image running a new Docker file. So down here, we're going to call this Dockerfile distribution, or better yet, how about dist.Dockerfile, because that way the extension is Dockerfile. We pass the node environment, this time production. So, and then when we take a look at this Dockerfile in a second, we'll kind of see what that's all about. All right, in this pipeline, it starts up, it runs tests if it has them, and that's it. And now, what happens after this point is you've created two images. So I kind of think it'd be nice if drone kind of just shoved this back in your folder for you. And then you could just continue on the same kind of thing. You create a deployment process and you create a pipeline and you mount the folder and you can do stuff with those newly created images, which are just tars at this point. So you could create a container, you can mount the folder, you could create your own commands, like you could connect to SSH to your registry and you could push the image and you could tag it and you could send an email and sing a song, maybe do a dance, whatever you want right here. So I know this looks kind of, maybe it's a lot of stuff and maybe it's too much for this video, but I'm going to press forward and I'm going to show you how I do this pipeline process today without drone. So kind of prepared this mega environment here and got a bunch of commands prepared. So let's first look at, in this YAML file, this is a part of a Node web app that I created, a gulp Angular project, and it's got nothing in it. We can check that out by doing gulp serve. And in just a second, we'll see our browser be able to launch up there. And this is what it looks like. So as a developer, I'm going to make a change to the home page here. So we'll just go to that oh, it's not index, it's main. All right, go to the main page, right? We're gonna say rock on drone. So going from here, this typical pipeline process, we're saying, all right, we're going to do a commit. We're going to trigger our first pipeline, which is our Dockerfile, to our base image. So let's go ahead and do that. We will we'll commit that drone YAML just because that's nice. Just going to say, yeah, we fix syntax, and we also, we change the message on the home page. All right, we'll commit and push. We'll pretend that kicked off drone, or theoretical drone here, and we'll bring up theoretical drone right here. So these three panels over here are just showing you what's going on in the Docker world. And you'll see that, oh, oops, I was supposed to delete those. But you'll see that I'm tailing a log here. This is just all the images that exist. I'm going to clean those up real quick. And then down here, we got the running containers, which is just I got a drone box and I got weave going on. But we'll get rid of these real fast. Maybe I'll edit this out. Maybe I won't. All right. That's what we're going to create. All right. All right, we'll leave this unknown because I don't know what he is. All right. So, like I said, we kicked off this pipeline. Pipeline says, well, I'm going to clone the project in, right? Number one up here, clone the project into the folder. So I got some prepared commands here. I'll put these in the video and all that kind of stuff, but we're just going to say we're going to have the directory. This is like what drone does. It creates a directory. It's going to clone your project in there. So we got to make it. So we create the directory, and then we clone the project in. Oop. Da-da-da. Oh, got to remove. Must have been that I didn't delete it earlier. We'll try cloning again. All right, clone the project in the directory. All right, so let's kick off the Dockerfile because that's kind of the typical thing here. So we want to kind of do what drone does, and we want to store our git hash so that we can tag these boxes and kind of track what's going on. But we'll do a Docker build next. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to cut this video much shorter, but you're going to see that, hey, I used a base image and then I installed npm, exactly like what I said right here. But let's see that source code. So in our Dockerfile, from node latest, we make a directory for our app. We set our work directory to that. We copy and package JSON. This allows us to utilize the cache of Docker. We do an npm install, and then we're going to copy our bower, and then we're going to do our bower install, and then down here we're going to copy everything else, the whole project essentially, the whole shaboodle, right into the folder, and then command npm start. That does gulp serve on this bad boy. It does the same exact thing that I did down in this window. Now, everybody hates how npm takes 15 years to finish, and it will take 15 years right here. So I'm going to skip forward in the video. But the good thing is it will only take 15 years on the first build, and anytime you change package JSON. All right, so one of the things that I forgot to point out a second ago was if you were watching the window over here, and down here you'd see that Docker's doing its normal thing. It's creating the temporary containers, and it's creating the image, and it's getting everything ready to go for you. And it's just about to finish the command there. So now, if we look back over here, we just created a base image. Awesome. So now what do? We move on to the next step. So our base image is on our box, our Docker host, and now we need to just attach a container to that. So let's just do that. Let's just docker run temporary. We'll remove it when we're done. We're going to throw that bad boy on port 80, and then internally it's on 3000. We'll give it a name, and we'll key it to our hash. That makes life a little easier for us. And what happens there? Well, if we go to our IP address, we'll copy it, because that's, oh, I can't copy it right there. That's too bad. 10.0.1.25, and have to do this because, oh, there's our site. Works just like we expected. It doesn't do anything because it's kind of bare bones, but see, it says rock on drone, so we're getting somewhere. And if we kill that, you'll see. All right, so we learned something. It runs. If I was to deploy that, it's good. Well, I'm not sure because I didn't do the test, so let's do that next. So the same thing. We're going to start another container on top of that image, but we're going to go into the shell. And now we're just going to do the same thing that we're doing in the current drone, which is you execute a command. And you say npm test, what's going on? And it says, hey, everybody's good. Great. So he passes. Oh, so we'll move on. And we're going to say, all right. So here's the tricky part. This time when it starts a container, it's got to mount the folder because we want to get stuff back into it. So for this one, it mounts that directory, and then we start it up, and we simply do, oh, I got to use this funky syntax here because gulp is not global, it's in the project. But you do that, dun 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 dun. And another special treat is that I want Bower in the distribution build, but at the moment, I did the Bower install inside of the base image, so the files don't exist up in the folder. So I'm going to copy out what I created in the base image for the Bower components, because I need those in the distro. I'm going to copy them up to the folder too. I'm going to use this super complicated command, copy, might have seen it before, and that's it. Now, look, we're almost there. So what goes on now? Now we're saying drone says, oh, I got another Docker file. It's got a different name. At the moment, this feature's not in Docker yet. You can't use a different name, so you gotta unfortunately rename it. But oh yeah, let's take a peek on our drone. Let's take a peek at that folder real fast. The distribution, and you'll see, oh, that was created from that step right there. So moving on, Docker distribution. Like I said, I got to move that file, unfortunately. I got to switch the two Docker files in the project name around. And I just tailed it to make sure. So this is the other one. Notice how that's node app instead of npm start. All right. So we're going to do the exact same process. We're going to say Docker build that. And if you noticed, that was lightning fast because it was already cached from the first build. So some of the steps already done. Now for our distribution, we need to have Express, well, Connect, actually, Connect web server. And so it's got to do an npm install as well, but it's the npm with the production flag. So let's look at this one. All right, so we're doing the same thing, node latest. We're going to make an app directory. We're going to copy our package JSON. But this time we're going to install with the production flag. And then we're going to copy that distribution folder that our image created and moved up to drone. We're going to copy it in. And then we're going to copy the Bower components folder in. And then we're going to copy just, not everything, but just app.js, because all we really care about is him. And then we're going to copy it up, and then we're going to say, hey, node, run this guy, because this is the distribution. All right, so we'll hide this, and it built, no problems. All right, so this one's pretty easy. We're going to do this next step right here, which is we're going to test if the image starts up. So we're simply going to run it. Oh, you know what? I know this. Don't need that interactive, but whatever. We'll remove it when it dies. And then we're going to, this one starts on port 9000 just to show you that they're different. And we're going to bind it to 80 again. And we're going to run that. And it says, oh, my Connect server is listening. All right. Let's go back to here because we bound it to port 80 again. And bam, production. We're good. All right. So now we're saying hypothetically here, drone sends a command to Docker and says, Docker, run Docker save. And it does. And it puts that in the folder for you. All right. And then you would just rinse and repeat this same kind of philosophy for this last piece, which is you'd be able to start up any image you wanted, mount the folder into it, and then you can run whatever commands. And that's how you could deploy both these images. You could deploy one image to a dev repository. That would be like the first image here, what I call base image. You get to deploy that up to your dev repository, so you could turn it into a Vagrant box for developers, or you could deploy it in a development environment so that when they're viewing the site, they got source maps still. And then this other one that you created here, the distribution image, you can push that bad boy up to your production registry, and that could auto-deploy. All right, so pretty much covers everything except for why? Why this way? Well, so let's kill that, and let's say I made a change to my website because I'm a developer, and that's why I do. So we're going to go to main HTML, and we're going to say, rock on, drone, right? Always pleasure scaffolding your apps. Always a pleasure to not download npm packages! Exclamation point. All right, so let's commit this because I think we all know where this is going, right? We're going to say updated the message. All right, so you're doing your normal job. You're developing, and you're going to commit and push. All right. What happens? That's right. It kicks off another build. But this time, oh yeah, sorry. I got to flip those Docker files back. Like I said, I don't have that updated binary of Docker installed, so I got to rename them. It kicks it off. We're pretending like that didn't happen. All right. Now, here's the great thing. It's going to do a build. Let's see how fast it takes this time. Because we're utilizing the Docker cache because we're talking to the exact same Docker host. It's got everything it needs for the base image. It just needs to update your one file. No npm install, no nothing. And we're going to be through this whole process lickety-split. Boom. Did it work? Oh, my bad. Take that hash out. Boom. Yeah, it worked. Always a pleasure not downloading npm packages. I agree. Whoever wrote that is a genius. All right. Rocking through here again. Keep going. All right, we got to run our test. Let's see, does everything work? It works. All right, we got to get the distribution back up to the folder. Remember, this would be in the drone YAML file. You wouldn't be typing these commands in, except for once. Compiling a Node app. I know most of you are used to 80 hours for compiling, but we just do the easy way. Oh, that's done, right? Then we're going to move on. Show you that it's there on the hard drive. All right, remember this is just because I don't have the updated Docker binary. We flip around the name of those Docker files. And then we're going to build our distribution box. And last but not least, we're going to test the distribution box, and we'll pretend we pushed it up to a registry. And there we go. That's a wrap, folks. So I hope this example kind of shows, I think utilizing current Docker process where you really build containers that have single functionality, and you build images, right, that can essentially have a container that starts that one functionality. And when you do that combination, I think you really open the door to how drone can go through this process. And you could make it, export 3 containers or however many containers, and you can do services totally different, and you can write plugins inside of Docker containers that you link to your to your container that you run on it. And that becomes really powerful. So I hope this is helpful to everybody. Thanks for the hard work, Drone team. I'm loving Drone. I'm trying to contribute as much as I can, but I don't know Go, so I'm not the biggest help, but I'll get there.